Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget. For all your kayak fishing accessory needs, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. The 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the153anglers.com. Now let's get this show started.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Reel Down. If you're checking us out on YouTube, hit that like and share button. Give us some follows. We love y'all. We appreciate everybody being here. For everybody listening that can't see already, got my man Drew back for an episode. He's been busy being an adult and got a new baby, and responsibilities have to be taken care of. I completely understand. But how you been, man?
Been good. Can't complain. Baby is sleeping pretty well, all things considered, for a newborn. And, we still have to do the typical 3 hours, wake up, feed her, and all that good stuff. But it's not bad. She's, could be so much. I remember my son was much worse. Maybe it was because it was our first and we just didn't understand or know that was coming. But man, it just mad respect, obviously, for all the fathers and mothers out there listening. You know what I'm talking about. It's a rough, first couple months here. And we're almost through it, man. I'm excited to talk fishing and
Heck yeah.
Really excited to eventually get back out of the water myself. I'm going to start my season a little bit later this year, probably at that BASS championship in early March. But, I just want to stay home a little bit as long as possible with the newborn and help support the family. So, yeah, all's good, man.
Well, man, I'm glad you got to hop on for a little bit. You were about the only person that popped in my head that I wanted to do this one over with, just because you can be so detailed. So today's show we were going to focus on like tournament season prep, not just hitting it for the new people, like gear, stuff like that, which that's part of it. But, for people that take this somewhat seriously, all the way up to people that, maybe you're just on the brink of, being one of the names everybody hears, or this is the first year that they've decided to take it, very seriously, try to, earn a secondary or primary income doing it. So I wanted to have you on to talk about that. You've been doing that, this is your living right now. I mean, you have, your hands in multiple little ventures, but it is all basically around kayak tournament fishing one way or another. So, wherever you would like to start, because basically it starts with the decision. There are pros and cons to it. Is that, are you willing to make sacrifices of being at home, or maybe you're single and that's not a factor. So, nothing's really keeping you there, but,
Sure.
that would probably be the first thing, is just making that decision, like what went through your head when you decided that this is like primarily what you wanted your focus to be on, as far as,
Right.
like period. This is what I do, or we starve. Like it's not that extreme, but that's the way that's how I treat myself when I went into business for myself. It was like, we're going to make it or we're not,
It kind of, it's not to that extreme, but in some ways it's pretty similar to that because, this kayak I've been developing with Crescent has taken longer to come out, and, part of my income really does come from us having a kayak that I've helped them develop and getting it on the market and sold to all you guys out there listening, who I'm sure are going to love it. And it's not too much longer, so hang in there.
I'm excited.
And I've been fishing out of a prototype. It's awesome. I'm excited about it. And, but it's funny because in the meantime, tournaments and what I do in the money I get from sponsors to kind of be in this industry, right, in this space, have sort of been what I've lived off of. Isn't that crazy? I really have supported, we've obviously had savings and other stuff, but, winning, I think last year in the 20-something $1,000 range, combined with the money that I bring in from sponsors as well, kind of just kept us afloat as a family with savings as well, so moving up to Ohio and all that, it has been sort of like that. So I've got a taste of, what it would be like to just have to rely on this. And then, but one of the things that definitely goes through your head is, you've got to be very detailed about your scheduling and very strategic, because I'll give you an example. In golf, they've done studies, and if golfers, there's a tournament in golf every weekend, right? Pretty much like 50 something weekends of the year, right? And you could, if you're on the PGA Tour and you have priority, you could just enter every tournament if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the younger single guys do that. And they've done studies, even with the older guys, for everybody. Once, if an angler, or not a golfer, enters once I think it's his third weekend in a row, his performance goes down. And then it gets a worse the fourth and the fifth. So you can see the point is, you do decline on your performance in a sport that's an individual sport like this, where you're traveling, just like we have to travel, they have to travel, golfers do across the country. Super strategic in the scheduling, because you need to have the gaps in between. You need to pick, and we're fortunate to have four, the All-American series, and even more than that, really. You got isn't there still the Elite Series or whatever it's called in the Northeast, I think?
Yes.
And so there's that, which is a bigger entry fee payout. There's the All-American, there's KBF, there's Hobie, there's Bass. You've got enough choices between all of them to get into tournaments where you're going to have 100 people buying in for, $150, $200, whatever, $250 to get a payout that is significant, right? So you don't have to just go fish every single one. If you are young and single and can, while there may be some advantages you have in doing that, there's also advantages to being strategic on which ones suit your style. Obviously, location and not wasting money, because if you're making money, if you're wasting it driving back and forth across the country, then it's all about what you're profiting, right? So you got to consider that when you're getting into this. Same thing goes with taking time off in between events, even though you could probably go and win whatever, cash a check and win $1,000 or 2,000. How much more money could you potentially be bringing in? Again, it's all about profit. If you were to spend that time getting some photos edited, or getting some videos edited, getting some more shows out to build that side of your brand, social media, which eventually leads you to the sponsorships from the manufacturers. Because I think anyone who's a kind of a PKA or an aspiring professional kayak angler, most of you should probably know you're never going to make a living on the tournament checks. Your living will your base salary, if you will always come from sponsorship dollars. Now, I'm telling you right now, we don't have high base salaries in kayak fishing. Okay. You're listening to this, you're thinking, well, geez, man, I'm lucky to get free stuff from a few of my sponsors and a discount from others. It's coming. And there are many out there who are getting cash in the kayak space. And I don't know if for some people, it might add up to, covering just their entry fees. Maybe it's just a few $1,000s. Other people,
which is a huge deal.
Huge.
I mean, for us right now, that, like, if you look, there's another great podcast that I listen to, has nothing to do with fishing most of the time, called the Meat Eater Podcast. Steve Rennell and those guys out west. They just recently had Brandon Polinick and Carl Jacobson on, and that got brought up. Just like a small step back. We talking about it's coming. There's a lot of what we as kayak anglers want out of this that the boat fishing world is still struggling to get.
True.
They do have, way more sponsor dollars than we do, and have way bigger turnouts. But I mean, you're talking $5,000 a derby and entry fees. Getting that covered by an angler or by a sponsor is incredible. And that's the same thing here. It correlates down. You look at these tournaments, $250 right now for most of these tournaments. And if you fish, 10 of them a year, it adds up for, regular Joe. Like if you go in and pick a series like Hobie and you want to hit all of them, or Bass, because I think with Bass, if you fish all of their registered events, you automatically qualify for the Classic. So, if you weren't confident enough, in your ability to win one of those or qualify, maybe you're looking mid-season like, okay, I probably got to fish the rest of these events to guarantee I get there.
Mm-hmm.
So the entry fees alone outside of the traveling is a huge one. But
huge. So
huge.
if you can get your entry fees covered and your lodging covered, I know a lot of folks camp. There's still costs associated with the camping, but let's say you Airbnb or hotel it. If you can get all of that covered, that's huge right now. That amount of cash just to cover that. But there's definitely people out there probably getting paid, 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40, $50,000. I would think that's the upper echelon probably. But there are definitely those kind of deals out there, and they're coming, even though the majority are probably, $5,000 in cash or less of anyone who's getting paid, cash. But that covers that. So it's all about profit. So now you're not going to fish too many tournaments in a row, or too many they're spread across the country, wasting gas and travel money. You're going to focus on building your brand so you can have what's called a media kit to sell at the end of the year to these sponsors. You're probably going to work on right now talking to maybe, obviously you probably have a sponsor. If you're listening to this, we're talking about people who are, kind of more aspiring to be pro kayak anglers. If you do, they're probably going to ICAST. Talk to them now about getting yourself a pass to get into ICAST. ICAST is not a place where anything's going to get done in terms of deals, but you're going to at least be able to quickly meet a marketing director for a brand, just have a quick impression, get their card and send them a follow-up later with something cool you can show them. Well, how are you going to show them something cool if you were just out there fishing tournaments all year long and all you have to show them is, well, I made $23,000 and I was, second in the Hobie AOI and I was 11th in KBF, and on the KBN power rankings I was, 7th. That's literally all you could show them if all you're doing is fishing tournaments and not focusing on building a social media or a YouTube or something else, good photography, something else. Okay. So now you're using the time in between, you're strategically scheduling your events to build that. So you can get to ICAST, get a card or two from some marketing directors at different booths, get something together. And let's say you got 3 sponsors now, try to get 6 next year, try to double that, because it's really hard to, you're just not going to go to ICAST and just all of a sudden have 10 more sponsors next year. You'd rather have good, solid relationships and get it nailed down and have them, invest in you and then kind of grow it from there. But,
and for what you just said, you're not the only person at ICAST trying to do that. So they're getting hammered and hit by 15 million people. Piece of advice, something that I've always been pretty good at is, marketing and networking like myself. And that's basically what you have to do at anything that you want to be, good at or professional at. It's all about, making yourself known. Who do you know? Be good with connecting with people. And in these situations like Drew's talking about, when you're going to ICAST and you're just trying to like drop your name in the hat, you don't want it to be an hour-long conversation unless they make it a long conversation because they're already someone interested in you. But most of the time, you're just there to say, hey, this is me. Hopefully we can talk sometime, blah, 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 go about your business. That way you're not, because these guys, like I said, they're getting hammered from people. They might just be sick of talking to people. Don't be the person that pushes them over that edge.
100%, man. You're dead on the money there. Some people just try to push too much there and try to get a deal done or something done, and they just aren't in a position to do it, because really ICAST is a consumer show really for the companies to not consumer, sorry, a industry show for the companies to basically be writing orders for their dealer. All their dealers are there. The last thing that they want to be dealing with is, getting overloaded with people come up to them, wanting stuff. So
wanting free stuff.
Wanting free stuff. So yeah, that's smart. If you just say, if you use this phrase, say, look, I know I'm not going to take up your time here. This show is really not, so much about that. And I know you're already busy, because they already have a whole schedule with appointments. Like every marketing director is full. Their whole schedule for ICAST is full. So unless you get into a 30-minute window by networking, like you just said, with a friend or somebody that you know that got you introduced to them previously, which is not a bad idea, to go ahead and get a meeting set up that's an actual 30-minute meeting if you can, because that's great. But they're kind of meeting with a lot of their other pro anglers, on the boat side and everything else as is. So a lot of times they're already full. But if not, just you can use this phrase. Hey, I know you're busy. I'm not going to bother you, take up your time here. I just want a chance to just get your card, get your email, so I can send you something to maybe take a look at, and try to send it to them pretty quick, because, if it gets later in the year, they could have already had their budget figured out for the following year or committed it, whatever. So anyway, that's enough about that. But that's the goal, is to try to make your base salary as high as possible from sponsor dollars, and then everything else you win, it's gravy from there. So,
and and again, if you're not at that point, and like we said, this is your deciding whether this is it. This is what I want to try to do. I think I have a shot. These steps are what you'll be looking at in the future either way. Whether you have sponsors or not now, if you commit to this being your income, that does have to be thought about. Everything has to be, you can't just wing it. That's something, I mean, some people do. I don't want to say you can't. I wing a lot of things. But there's like, to be successful and make sure that you limit your possibility of failure, and being detail oriented and having everything like listed out. Know what gear is going to cost you if you it's very rare, I would say, especially in our sport, that everybody has every piece of their gear paid for or given to them. You're coming out of pocket for something. Um, entry fees, like we said, you need to like calculate fuel mileage, travel distance, lodging, just like Drew was
Mm-hmm.
saying, and there's so much of it, that I would probably say that's the most important thing before you get into all this other stuff I have listed. Is like, you know, first, let's say you've went like Drew said, you understand, there can be too much. Make your
Mm-hmm.
schedule first. Like, okay, I've picked these 5 events, and then go from
Yep.
those 5 events, and that's where you can start making these lists. We already talked about entry fee. Do you have any insight, Drew, on like how you go about figuring up like your travel and your like lodging
I
and
do.
stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. So what I do is I got a schedule pulled up here. If you want to share my screen for those who are watching this, um, basically what I do is I put it in an Excel spreadsheet, like you can see here, and tell me if you're on it because I actually can't see the StreamYard stream right now. Are you on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I put in all of the tournaments from, and I'm not putting in any West Coast tournaments because I'm not going to get out there, but all the, anything from the, Mississippi over pretty much. Um, I put in here anything that I could possibly maybe potentially go to, and then I look and see how it all breaks down, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a bummer this year. We do have a lot of conflicts with weekends where you got like for example April 16th Grand Lake in Oklahoma, and the next weekend 23rd 24th you fall in Alabama for Hobie, and then KBF the same weekend too. It's like it's tough for anybody to fish two of those, really. I mean, it's going to be hard. It's like back to back to back. There's a lot of unfortunate scheduling this year. It just happened to work out that way, where I think last year's schedule was a lot better in terms of we had more options, but now
Mm-hmm.
you got to kind of pick. And so what I have to do is, I kind of figure out. So you can see I'm not all these green marks right here, by the way, are all the ones I'm probably doing. These are the lighter green or ones I may or may not be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I still could even do some that are white there. That haven't turned any color, but basically I have them all color coordinated. The KBF is gray, the bass is blue, and the Hobie is in orange or yellow, whatever that is right there. So yeah, look, I know I'm not going to start till Lake Russell and the Bass Championship in March, but then I'm kind of hitting it hard with the Harris chain right after that for BASS, and then Santee Cooper at the end of March too. So I just so you guys know, I'm actually just focusing on. I'm going to focus on all three, but I'm really going to try to get 4 of the BASS events in. And since I can't get to Lake Fork, it's a little too early with the newborn. I've got to make decisions, right? And I'm just kind of going over this because you guys have things in your life that are happening too. So now I'm thinking, well, if one of my goals is to qualify for the championship for bass for next year, I'm already in this one in Lake Russell, but the next one, then I think they're actually going by AOY list this year. I don't even think you can fish all 5 and qualify automatically. I think they're just going off.
Yeah, I think they did go away with that.
I think they did. So knowing that, I've got to get high enough up in AOY to qualify. So to do that, you got to fish for sure 4 events because they're taking the best 4 out of your 5, right? So
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I've missed Fork, I already know I've got to go to Harris chain, right? And then I've got to go to Grand Lake, I got to go to Lewis Smith, and I got to go to Pickwick. So before I put all the greens in here, the ones that I'm going to, I did those first. I was like, okay, if that's one of my goals I want to do, then because I want to obviously a chance to win, one of the biggest championships in our sport on the biggest stage, the Bassmaster Classic stage. So that's why I kind of prioritize that one this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have high priority on the Hobie events because I'm a little bit. I sting a little bit from not, being able to defend my AOY title by obviously our daughter came and that was way more important, but not being at Eufaula to defend when I was in second place, which is better off than I was the year I won the AOY when I was in third, it stings. So I want
Oh
to
yeah.
go have a shot at winning that again. So I've prioritized some Hobie events. So once I've done, so now I moved on to, Santee Cooper, and then looked at the rest of my schedule. Where can I fit in? Broken bows on my son's birthday, for example. So, I want to be here for his birthday. So I'm not doing that one as much as I'd love to be there. Unless I somehow, his birthday party ends up another weekend and somehow, talk my wife and let me go out there, which is very unlikely. So, but obviously I want to be here if he's got a party anyway. So that's, again, things in your life like that, they're going to play a role and a factor, because we all have, things going on with families and relatives and stuff like that too, and work and jobs. So that's kind of how I broke it down. Then I just prioritized all the Hobie events, and generally I kind of can pull off like one event a month. That, I may have some months that are a little bit different, where like in March, for example, but I've got my family's going down there with me into Florida after the Harris chain, so they're going to be there. So I'm not like gone all the, from the family all of March. So, usually it kind of plays out to start to become about once a month here at the end. And then I sort of zig and zag at the end of this whole thing. Obviously the 3 championships, or the 2 championships at the end of the year I want to be at, but these last, tournaments here I have listed could all kind of zig and zag. And that's how I do it. I want spaced out events so I can have time to come home, get reorganized, reset, get lures and tackle organized, reorder with my sponsors products that I may need, because the problem is if you start doing them too quick, it's not only fatigue that you're going to have, it's also your organization isn't going to be there. Your preparation is not going to be there. And if it is there, then of course it might be costing you sleep and exhaustion.
Something will suffer.
Something's going to suffer. You're absolutely right. So that's kind of how I have it laid out there. Now, here's what could happen. Let's say I somehow, because here's what I did have. I'm going to Champlain because I loved Champlain, and it's a KBF. And I looked on my list and I was like, man, that's like the only KBF I've got listed for sure. And then I was like, man, I almost might need to try to get to the Potomac or Gunnersville somehow, even if it requires me not to have like any pre-fishing time or one day, just so I'm not gone as long. Because what happens if later in the year I hit Champlain, right? And there's 2 tournaments a weekend, trail series. And I'm sure it sounds like, I think it's the best 3 events again for their AOI, right?
Yeah.
So I did well Champlain last year in Hobie Bass Open Series. I got second, and it happens to be the exact same dates pretty much. So I think I know what the fish are going to be doing. Let's say I have 2 good events there. I've only got one more KBF opportunity, and that's Lake St. Clair and Erie, to try to get, one more to qualify for the AOI.
Right.
So I'm sort of I kind of went backwards once I had seen that the only KBF was the Champlain, and I was like, man, I kind of need to try to find a way to do, Potomac or Gunnersville possibly, or something else. I've considered Lake Murray, South Carolina, but that's right before our pre-fishing, and would cut into the pre-fishing time by 1 day for the championship. But the championship for bass is just too important to me not to have all 3 of those days on the water, right?
Right.
So you just start to piece the puzzle together, man. And if I can do one of the KBS before then, and I end up doing good in Champlain, then I'm going to have a shot at the AOI over there. If not, I'm putting more of my eggs in the Hobie basket. I have a feeling they're going to require one more event this year for their AOI. I don't know if they've announced anything, but the talk would sort of suggest that they were going to maybe make it a little bit more prestigious AOI, like one more event. And maybe, I don't know if they're still going to count the TOC or not, or make it same points and not double points or whatever. But
yeah,
it sounds like something's going to change on the way they do it. And I think that's smart. So that's why I have so many Hobies in there, because we don't have a ton. I've 1, 2, one, two, nope, not broke bow. Let's see. Yeah. 2, they're all at the end, I guess, possibly 2 there, and then 3, 4, 5. So if I did 5 and they required us to have 4, that would give me one sort of mulligan. You know what I mean?
right.
Which,
that was something I was going to say too, is, you have to be flexible, because, if you're taking on a lot, if you're going in to maximize your opportunity, like right now, like you said, you're focusing on bass. That's like your bigger of your priority. You're going to hit those events. But let's say things don't work out, but like you said, you hit 2 good events for KBF, and then you only need one more good one to, be crushing AOI. That might change your schedule mid-season, where you're like, okay, yes, I wanted to be here, but this is what's working out, so I need to go with this.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And then the other thing I was going to mention on this chart, you guys can copy this if you want. Just duplicate it. I've got a list for all the tournaments, the dates, and then I also have the fees. So if there's this is supposed to be entry fee plus fee. There it is. Sorry, I got to scroll up one time.
There we go.
Entry fees, miles round trip. I'm, about $50 a tank on fuel, I think is what I estimated when I made this a couple years ago. Lodging, I'm just averaging $75 a night. Probably get away with a lot cheaper than that when you stay with, several people. But just to be on the high side, I'm doing $75 a night. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this whole spreadsheet, you can take a screenshot of it when this is all filled in, And by the way, last column is food and then fishing licenses. But once this all gets filled in, you've got your totals. You bring your total down to the bottom here, highlight it in red, bold, screenshot that, make it a JPEG. And that's something you will pitch to your sponsors and say, look, I'm spending $15,000 out of pocket to be out there to, yes, potentially, cash some checks and make some money, have a good time fishing, but ultimately also to promote your products, to the world and show them how they can help me become successful on the water. So this right here, guys, is a key. You take that right there, you fill it all out, you put it all in there. Once the schedules are announced, which obviously they're all announced now, and the moment these schedules come out and you make your schedule, you can kind of fill it all in, screenshot it, JPEG it, whatever, and then send it to potential sponsors. And I think once they see that and they understand, like, wow, this guy really is spending a lot of money. He's out there investing himself and investing in us by spending the money to fish all these and travel around in his time. Least we can do is cover 2 or 3 of his tournament entries. Come on,
Yeah,
$250 times 3. But if you don't have this, they don't really understand what all you're doing and how much it costs. So this is a nice tool.
And it helps them, but it'll also help you. Like for me just now, something that I haven't calculated into mine was licenses. You don't realize when you travel how many fishing licenses you buy. And maybe it's not as expensive as a, tournament entry fee, but it's still money that adds up.
For sure. And then, go ahead.
And then you can also do, like he said, if you take a picture of this total and then you turn around at the end of the year and put what money you made back from this,
right?
It'll either show you that you need to do better, it worked out pretty well, or you may see such a big loss where you're like, okay, maybe I need to cut this in half for next year,
exactly,
work my way back up. Being able to see it, really, really helps. Now, what did you use to estimate your lodging and food? Did you pay attention to what you had been spending, or did you just say, like, this is my budget, this is what I can spend, I'm gonna cut it down to this?
I mean, most of those Airbnbs, once you get cleaning fees and all that put in there, it's, like $75 a night, unless if you're just getting one that's going to sleep like, 1 or 2 people, like I was doing a lot during COVID because I, didn't want to be around a lot of people. I was kind of staying by myself, and it, was typically looked like about $50 a night. But once, like I said, the fees and stuff get added in, you just can't find many places that are much cheaper than that on Airbnb. And if you do, you probably don't want to stay there. You'd much rather, much rather just camp at that point. So that's kind of where I got that number. And like I said, I'm averaging a little high, but it's not high to a manufacturer, a business, an LLC that's out there making rods, reels, lures, whatever. That's not high. When they go send an employee to a conference, they're giving them more than $75 a night for a hotel. I promise you that. That's like a 1.5, 2-star hotel, and they're not putting their employees up and stuff like that. So when I actually went high, because I know if this is a tool for them to look at, that doesn't look insane to them. That actually looks reasonable. Like, man, this guy's on a budget, trying to do this the right way. He's doing it on a budget. But the reality is, even if you're camping, put $75 a night on there, because it's going to make your total, be higher, because there's expenses with camping. But also, that's just, if they at least see that, then that's just potentially
there's
more.
nothing wrong with putting a few of those dollars in your pocket. You'd be upfront with them. But
100%.
like when I used to work out of town and we'd get our per diem, like, your goal is to find somewhere cheaper than what they budgeted you for and eat a lot less than what they budgeted you for. That way you had more money to take home. There's nothing wrong. That's the same thing. And like you said, you send them something they're already kind of used to looking at, and they're going to look at it and be impressed, and they're going to be like, hey, Jeff, next time I send you out of town, you're not staying at a $250 a night. This dude's staying for $75. What's your excuse?
Yep,
so
that's right.
It's just another tool. But
it's your choice for sure. And then the last thing I'll show you, and I'll stop sharing the screen here.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Is if you eventually want to start putting your results and the payouts, like I said over here, you can actually get another spreadsheet up. And I'll throw this up here that I do. This is my all-time tournament spreadsheet here. And I just
that's cool.
finished. Actually, shout out to Susie, who helped me put in some stuff behind the scenes on actual percent finish right here. She just added this tab because I was doing it all manually, and she was like, she could make Excel do that for me, so I don't have to do the
She's
math.
the queen of Excel spreadsheets. I will give her that. She is good at
Yeah,
it.
she is good. So, for example, here, finishing 5th out of 751 people at the KBF National Championship, I had it down as 1%, but really it's 0.00. It's lower than 1%. It's in the 0.00. What would that be? That 6/10th percentile or whatever that is? I don't know.
6,000th
Sixth, I don't know, but
percent.
it's better than 1%. So it actually, so what is my actual? So my actual, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this since she added this, so I'm just seeing it for myself right now. So it looks like my average finish is actually 13. The actual numbers, yeah, I average. Okay, I averaged 14th place out of a field size that averages 154 anglers, and that's, it was a lot skewed by a lot of those big KBF national championships. But so I averaged 14, which is average of
It's like
13%, or
yeah,
I don't know.
you're basically saying that you're 13% of the time you finish in the top 9% is what I'm
Yeah,
taking from
or
that.
no, I don't know if that's right. I think it's like, I don't know. I have to go see what
We'll
this
have to
is.
ask Susie.
If she put this in here or not. Yeah, we'll have to ask Susie for sure. But because I could have done math wrong, but I thought I had it where basically the top. That basically means if there's a tournament with 100 people, I'm averaging finishing 13th place. But I thought I had it. This number here, 477 divided by 5103 was 9%. I'll have to go check. But anyway, and you can see cool stats like I've cashed checks in 22 of 33 events. And that's kind of, you can get cool data from an all-time stats thing here,
And it's something else that you can
oh
present to potentials.
yeah, exactly. I think I may have made an adjustment somewhere for like a TOC has 50 people, but it's 50 elites. You know what I'm saying?
Got
We'll
you.
see. Maybe there's some things like that, but it's kind of cool having those stats, and you got to start it now because if you don't start it now, you're going to forget, and it gets harder to go back and find all of your finishes. You know what I mean? So start it
Oh
now
yeah.
because this is your proof back to, stuff like KBN power rankings and the AOY standings are cool, or they're cool when they work out for you because they're not exactly like AOYs right now. There's a lot of debate about that. Obviously, it's like just 3 events and championships are double points. So typically, if you do good at the championship, you're like whoosh, you're just up in the AOY, which you may not have had that good of a year, but it looks like it, and you can use that to your advantage. If you didn't have the greatest year, you ended up high in the AOY because you had a good championship. You can certainly sell that to a potential sponsor and use that screenshot. But this is actual true data you always have to show them too. You know what I mean? Like what you're doing. So anyway, I think it's just important to have this kind of stuff done and to show them, because it at least shows them you're professional about this and you're organized and you're keeping up with it and you're trying to improve. But anyway, we'll figure this out later. I can't wait to ask Susie, because to me, if I'm finishing, listen to this, if I'm finishing in 14th place and my average field size is 154, because we all know like 14 out of 100 would be 14th percentile. I'm in the 14th percentile, right?
Right.
So this to me, I think this is correct. I think it's the 9% centile is right, because I know it's not 13, because 14 out of 154 would be
Right.
a
No, it
lot.
does sound right.
It's 9 percentile. So I'm trying. I don't know if she added this or if I accidentally put this in or what that is, um, but at least you can kind of see, and it gives you goals, because now I have goals to improve on. So if I'm averaging 9th place finish out of 100, I want to see that go to 8 next year or 7. Try to somehow get it down. Obviously, that's probably unlikely because that's insane sort of path that I've been on, but that's what, at least I have a goal and I know where I sit, where I stand, to shoot for. Most of you guys out there just starting, you're learning, you take some knocks, you've had some events that you didn't get 5 fish and you're in 103rd place out of 125 or whatever. So your average is going to be up there, right? Your percentile is going to be not where you want to see it. But as you get better as an angler, you keep listening to the Paddle and Fin Reel Down and all the other shows, and you keep learning and getting better. It's going to be fun to watch your trajectory get better and better, and you keep finishing in that high percentile, because that equates to kind of what we're talking about here today: more checks cashed, and a way you can eventually make a living out of this.
Right.
All right, so
And it's a very detailed process, but you got to start somewhere, like you're saying, and all the things that you showed are great tools. And just as a recap, be detailed, be flexible, you know, make yourself a brand, be your own brand, market yourself, learn how to network. So that covers all of the, we'll say, like the pre prep work. let's say you've got your money figured out, you've got your tournaments figured out, your schedule's set. Then it gets to the real work because, you can do all the prep work you can as far as having it paid for, but, now your sponsors are expecting something in return, which in tournament fishing is going out, catching fish, and, making the brand look good. So then you get into, well, let's say it's coming up first tournament time. You've got map study and gear prep. Do you have like routines that you go by? I mean, without giving it away, which I don't think that really give away anything, but like your first event coming up, how do you approach it? Now, obviously for Russell, you've probably been working on it a lot longer because it's such a big event. But like, if it was just the first event of a year, not a championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's the quickest way to just say this is obviously I'm more of a skinny water guy, so I think Google satellite imagery and Google Earth is a little bit more valuable and important to me than looking at the lake through Navionics or some other mapping system. Whereas if you're an offshore angler more, you're probably looking at the topography, whatever of the lake more than I would. But you still look at the Google stuff and Earth too. But I look at the maps religiously. My wife is always like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, looking at maps. What do you think? And she's like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." So I'm always on maps, looking over and over and making my little waypoints and dropping pins on places I want to scout. So that's kind of what I do. I've told this before on different podcasts, on mine, on yours, I believe. Somebody's on Paddle and Fin, but basically I just make the map, drop my waypoints, and then look at the entire lake around, every little zoom in. I'm closely looking at it, zoomed in, every, piece of that bank and river and creek that feeds it, dropping all the pins. And then once you go around it one time, wait a week and then do it again. And then the thing that's cool is once you've done it, when you first start dropping your waypoints and pins, you get a little pin happy because, ooh, that looks good. This looks good. Everything looks good. Right. But once you actually go around the whole lake, then you actually understand, was what I dropped earlier, those first pins for the first, whatever, 20 or whatever, was that actually unique stuff, or is it really just the standard stuff on this body of water? Because the standard stuff on the body of water is not really, it's not the stuff that I feel is the easiest to catch fish on. It's not, they always want the transition from the gravel. I'm just using this as an example. They want to transition from on a clay bank to where it transitions from clay to rock, right? They want the, different unique stuff like that. They want the transition from hydrilla to milfoil, if you can find it. There's hydrilla all over the lake. There's milfoil all over the lake. It all looks good. You could drop pins all over where you find it and see it. But then how many places can you find that have, the unique features that I was using just sort of as an example, those random special unique features, how many of those do you really have? And then what will happen is you'll start pulling pins away. You say, oh, that's just a typical, because you can't pre-fish them all and you got to narrow it down somehow. So you need to just narrow it down to the areas you feel are the, have the most potential basically. And that comes down to you having enough experience on the water to actually know why you're pulling this one away as opposed to that pin away. That's where just, like I said, time and experience. I've been fortunate. I joke around, with people all the time saying, well, I was single till I was 35, met my wife at 35. And I think I get married at 36 and, somewhere around there. And so I was pretty much just single and dating the fish and my work, and because I was working in the kayak industry with Jackson at that point. So that's all I did. Just go around and fish and learn. I don't have as much time these days to pre-fish, but I rely on that experience and knowledge I already have, which is what a lot of people are still learning, getting out there, time in the water now. Fish haven't changed. I still know it all. It's here, even though I don't get a chance to get out there and just fun fish much these days. I'm pretty much just fishing when I go to tournaments, pre-fishing, and that's about it, which is kind of a bummer because I don't have as much time to get out and learn something like live scope, which I'm going to be doing this year. I got to find time to do it. But anyway, aside from new technology and things like that, I just already have the experience of being on the water. So I pull the pins away, I narrowed it down, and then that's kind of what I've done right now at home with the map study. Now, the other thing that you had said is, oh, and by the way, don't just pin your locations, pin the closest access points that you found to those spots, because
that's where I start.
Key.
Yeah.
That's key.
And just to give another point of view from it, if you don't have the experience that like Drew and some of these other guys do, like Jody and Russ and these guys that's been on the water for, tons and tons of time, like I prioritize launch areas, or possible launch areas, as well as like what I think they're keying in on, or what I think are hot spots, and limit everything down and think about, okay, I have this many days to pre-fish. So if I have 3 days, I usually dedicate that first day to driving around and looking at launches if I've never seen them. Once you start to do this a while and you go back to places, where you can put in and can't. But if you've never been there and have no idea, I don't know how many times I've banked on something that I could have sworn was a put in, and you missed a gate that you didn't see on Google Earth.
Right.
Boom, you can't get
Mm-hmm.
there, and then it's 4 mile paddle or motor to that spot from the next put in. So there's a lot of give yourself, like, if you don't have that experience and you're going to have to do some looking when you get there, I would say even limit your pins a little more. Have, priorities and backups for when you find those areas you can't get to, but then give yourself a day, a half a day, 4 hours. If it's a lake like Lake Fork, you can drive all the way around Lake Fork in like 40 minutes and actively stop, look at a put in, and leave. I mean, it's super
Mm-hmm.
easy to get around that lake. So, but if you're looking at a lake like Gunnersville that's got, I can't remember how many miles of shoreline. I've spent one whole day on one side of
It's
just the
long,
north end of the lake. Like, it takes
very
a
long.
while.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but
true.
that's just another point of view to take from it. If
Yeah,
give
absolutely.
yourself a little time and backup plan for like looking and when things don't work out. So, but
Right. That's good stuff, man. And after maps, I mean, it's a lot of Google image searches. It's a lot of trying to find any articles you can or any fish pictures or anything that's out there that can help give you any clue. And then on top of that, it's a lot of YouTube. You find videos of the body of water. And if you can narrow it down and find some that are, were taken and shot near the time of year that you're going to be there, even better. Looking at some river gauges, things like that from past and temperatures, just finding any information you can about the body of water. Just learn, because
any kind of
again,
historical data.
anything could be
So,
a clue. It's like a mystery. You know what I mean? Any little thing left behind in a murder scene could be the one clue. Like how many murders were solved because some moron just left one little thing that seems so insignificant. It's sort of the way it is with these tournaments, just because once you pre-fish, it all starts to just come together. Once you're there, and you've seen it in your head from the satellite imagery, you've got the picture in your head, and you go there, and then you're on the water, and you see all those put-ins. You go and drive around. I do the same thing. I drive around and see them all like the first day. Take at least a half a day or one whole day to do that. It just starts to click once, especially in a tournament, you start catching them, or in pre-fishing, you really start catching them. It's all going to come together, and then it's almost like you're going to reference something that you do remember hearing or seeing about this body of water that could actually be the one little key that connects the unlocking the entire puzzle for you. So
yeah.
yeah, a lot of
Something
stuff like
I'll
that.
add to that too is something I've been doing more in the last probably 8 months is, historical, not historical data of the body of water. Yes, you want that too. You want to see how it's set up
Mm-hmm.
in different years, same time of year, blah, blah, blah. So you can find the best comparison to what you're going to have. But when I'm researching like fishing in Florida in January, I will just Google fishing in Florida in that area, Kissimmee, Florida in January. Go further than just that first page. You will find back when no one used to care,
Mm-hmm.
when some of these fishing like magazines or town articles cover stuff, the angler would tell you right where he was sitting. And fish don't do the same thing every time in the same spot all the time, but fish live in cycles and things do come back around. So, maybe in 1985, Joe Schmuckatelli caught a 35-pound bag throwing a jerk bait off that point. Well, maybe it won't work that year, but it'd be at least something you might want to take a look at if you've got that
Right.
pre-fishing time. I did that on Pickwick. I found a 20-year-old tournament article, and the guy was like, when you pull up to this dock, go over 45 yards. And I just did it goofing off the sea, and that was the best fish I found while I was there. And was like,
Wow.
okay, a 25-year-old article, 25-year-old article still holds a little bit of weight. So get detailed
That's
with your
cool.
research if you're that kind of person, because sometimes that stuff just makes its rounds and
Yeah.
comes back in. So
Yeah, man, that's a perfect example of a clue that you found. And again, it may only have helped you may only find an article or something like that that helps you for one tournament or two a year. But if that's
Yeah.
2 out of the 12 you fish or whatever, I shoot for about 12 events a year, 12, 13, something like that. This year with the baby, who knows, could be 10 or 11. But if you're trying to shoot for 12 events, let's say you find 2 things like that. That's something you did what you could do from home in the winter when nothing else was going on, and you found them. And if somebody else is not doing that, that's 2 times you got a big boost up in the standings, or maybe you won a tournament. That could be the difference. And winning $500 or nothing or possibly winning $6,000, $7,000. So that's pretty cool for sure. That's a good example.
Yeah. And then, from that, is making sure your gear's, operational and in order, man. You don't know how many times you add something to your setup that will absolutely change and wreck how, like, I pulled my boat out and set it up yesterday, and I had added one thing, and it changed how everything else in the kayak fit, because that one thing, which it's worth its weight in gold. It's going to help me stage my rods, so it's a little faster to get to them and swap. But that changed where this steering handle could mount. It changed because I moved that. My net can't go here anymore. So gear prep, and then there's tackle prep. There's tons of that. Making sure you've got all your tackle, like you said, from your from your sponsors if you have them, or your go-to baits for the event, which goes back to research. Do you have any like little things you do? Like before the season starts, before each event, do you like set your boat up and get it ready, or go maybe take it on like a test run or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely while I'm still home, I can organize the tackle and the gear and the boxes, get the new stuff unwrapped out of packages and things like that. It's amazing how long that takes. I mean, if you guys out there, do it, it's unreal how long that alone takes. So getting all that knocked out in the winter is good. And then getting your boat set up, like you said, organized, especially if you are, getting into this seriously. A lot of folks do get a new boat every single year from manufacturer they're sponsored by. They want you to be in the latest boat, right? The latest model. So that takes time, especially if you have stickers you got to put on there, decals. I've kind of worked out a system where I don't really use a lot of that stuff. I got other areas and places I sort of help market, I guess, if you will, and share the story of my sponsors. Just because I also tell them, by the way, just so you guys know, I don't have a lot of decals really on my boats or any at all, because I tell them for marketing purposes, if let's say, I use 13 fishing rods and reels. 13 Fishing, it may not want a photo for their marketing or a video that's just got other logos and brands all over it. Maybe it's another brand I'm sponsored by that also happens to be owned by a conglomerate that also makes rods and reels that's a competitor against them. So I just say, hey, look, you're going to get, I think, a lot of great value out of this, because I'm not going to have all kinds of logos that also, and this is what I also say to them, I fish a lot of backwaters and rivers where I'm scraping sticks and rocks constantly. I can put stickers on the outside of my boat, but they're going to be gone in a couple tournaments and scratched up and not even look good. So it's going to look worse for us than better. And they all get that and understand that. So that's why I don't do that. But anyway, anything you need to do to rig your boat up, like you just said, you can do. Your line boxes, I get line. I actually, have a spreadsheet with all the stuff you need for a tournament, and how are you sort of looking? Have I reordered that for the year or not? And because, either you're buying it from Tackle Warehouse or somewhere like that, or you're contacting your, contact that sponsor, right? Either way, it could take who knows how long. Sometimes it could take a week or two if something's back ordered to get in. So it's never too early to start ordering that stuff and getting it organized. So the boat, new electronics, like I said, I'm going to be rigging up the Panoptics. I wish I had a little bit more time on the water with it, but that time will come. The beauty of the off limits period for the Bass Championship is we can't get on the water till I think Sunday, but there's nothing saying we can't get on the water on Lake Hartwell or another body of water on the day or two before if I need to practice working on my electronics or something else. So I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that there, and I'll go a day early for that championship to drive around, look at some put-ins, because I can still drive around, as well the day before we can get on the water. So
yeah, something while we talking about electronics, something I learned yesterday that I've already knew about and didn't think about. Make sure that you update the software on your electronics, because my unit was so mad that I haven't updated it since I bought it 2 years ago, that it finally wouldn't do anything without pushing an update, and I had 6 updates I had to go through to get it back. So
Mhm.
like think of all the little things that you might be complaining about, you're having problem with your unit, and they have put out a firmware update that fixed that, and you didn't do it. So little tip there, make sure you do
That's
that.
it's a good one.
But,
Maps
but
maps are a good one. I mean, if you do have electronics, you get all those cards you need for all your lakes and get it
yeah,
all set. And then speaking of cards, I'll say this last thing: if you are trying to be a PKA and really get paid for this, if you don't have your camera set up ready to roll too, and get that figured out, whether it's a GoPro or just a phone mount, and you're just going to take stills for Instagram, you just got to decide. And I actually was talking with Jordan Marshall recently and giving him some tips and advice on this. And he may not have taken this. I don't know what route he's going to go. I know he's trying to do a little bit more in the sport now, with some momentum he has with the AOI that he won last year. But I just told him this. I said, look, if you're pitching something to a sponsor, they hear so much. There's a lot of noise already. Some long media kit with all the stats that you need to keep it simple. So I said, I would much rather, if I'm a marketing director for a brand, I'd much rather just see that you have, 10,000 people on Instagram as opposed to, well, I've got 2,000 here, I've got 1,500 here, I got 3,200 here, and like TikTok, it all adds up to 10,000. You see what I'm saying? It's harder to keep up with 4 socials and actually have success than it would be just to focus on one thing. Are you doing YouTube and that's it? Are you doing YouTube? If so, focus on that and grow it all there. That way you can just share to them, I got 10,000
X
here, as
amount, yeah.
opposed to all across the board, because you're just not going to be able to keep up with it all. I regret that that's just the way the evolution of it happened. And I've got, a Facebook page, and then a Facebook personal profile, and then I've got a Instagram, and it's just like a Twitter
the
they
rest
don't
will
really use.
benefit
It's like,
from it too.
yeah,
Like if you focus on YouTube and you get big, I don't want to say get big. Let's say that you grow your following on YouTube. Well, as your following grows and people are obviously tuned into what you're doing, they will find your other ones. But like, think of people like Greg Blanchard, huge on YouTube, hardly ever see him post on Instagram.
right.
I mean, he picked what he's good
He
at and
picked
what
it.
he's
Yep,
comfortable with. And
that's
there's
right.
nothing, it does not hurt him at all that his Instagram is, lackluster
Right.
compared to his YouTube. It doesn't, they will all work each other out. And then,
Yep.
back to like gear and everything real quick,
Mhm.
a big thing to think about too is, if you're making that step now, you're getting to a professional level where time is key.
That's right.
Get your setup to where it's like muscle memory. You know where everything's going to go. This is how I need to have it when I leave my Airbnb, get to the boat ramp. That way I can get it in the water and then carry these 3 things to it. Have a system, keep it as simple as you can, keep it as neat as you can, because all that time, you don't want to be at the guy at the ramp that it took 45 minutes to get on the water. Let's say you woke up 5 minutes late. Everybody blasts off before you do, and then boom, someone got in your spot because you didn't have your shit together. Like,
Yeah.
that's a real possible problem. I've been that guy. I probably will still be
Mhm.
that guy because I have the world's worst luck. Something
Right.
will happen. You have to give yourself time, and even if you give yourself time, you need to have a plan. Have everything in
Yeah.
order to get the
Yeah.
job done. So
For sure. No, man, you can't spool up too early. You can never spool up and get things. I'm with you, man. I'm always last minute scrambling, and I'm, here preaching and teaching like, oh, do this, do that. And don't get me wrong, I do a lot ahead of time, but somehow I'm always like last minute still doing something that I could have done. I could have done some other point at home over the winter or something. Could have changed those treble hooks out, or I could have done that. So all those little things there, just get them done now. Build
and
it all out.
and I mean, a lot of people are like that. Even if you have those last minute tendencies like that, if you've taken the time to get 95% of the other stuff handled, I feel like you can handle that little 5%
Yeah,
of
for sure.
like, oh, crap, I got to run back to the truck. I left something there. Or dang, I didn't
Mhm.
swap these trebles last night, or crap, I
Yep.
forgot to retie that bait. You've got that time.
True.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
is there anything else that you want to add to it, man, before we get out of here?
I mean, we've kind of covered most of it. I think we didn't really mention if you do use motors, you want to make sure all that's dialed in, the right batteries, the right setup for motors, and that it's if you use extension cables, you want to separate your battery, in your tank well, and if you have a bow mount. Some people like to do that. Make sure you're doing things correct, the proper way. And I'm not saying I did something wrong, but I could have. I still haven't even opened up my motorhead that blew up at the second day of the KBFNC, the final day of the Trail Series Championship, which I'm not bitter about because I was leading AOI heading into the final day and not even in the 10 after that happened. But anyway, smoke was coming out of my motorhead, dude. Smoke was coming out. I was a mile and a half up the river, and I still wanted to go a lot further, and I was in a big solo skiff. I couldn't really paddle it back to the launch. So my point is I think I ended up with 76 inches that day, just kind of had to paddle that big barge around. Thank God I brought a paddle with me, as a backup. But you just wouldn't expect a nice new motor guy to have that happen, right? Because they just never have for me. And I think what happened is I cut the shaft down short. Of course, I'd used it all year and didn't have a problem. Had to happen right then, of course. Anyway, so I cut the shaft down, right? And I think that when you put that bolt back through to put the head of the shaft back on, the screw, I must have nicked through a wire because that's where it was all happening. When I open it up, I'll probably find out that's what it was. But my point is, don't let anything mechanical or anything that was not done correct or proper be what causes you to fail out there in the water, because it's a shame when you do all the rest. You spend all the time, you travel, all the money, all the research, everything, and then you get out there and something like that could have been prevented isn't. And then you're just sitting there, you're just sick to your stomach when it happens. Trust me.
And anytime you're dealing with anything electronics or motor, anything at all mechanical like pedal drive, there is variables that you can't control. You can do your best to prevent them from happening. Like
right.
Maybe I could have paid attention when I put that screw in to double check that it wasn't nicking a wire. Maybe I could have done my yearly maintenance on my pedal drive. But sometimes stuff just happens. So,
yep.
You got to be able to roll with it. And I mean, obviously the result didn't work out the way you did, but your way of rolling with it was you had a backup plan. You had a paddle with you. Thank God. You might still be out there pushing your way back home.
And then that's right. And thank God I had my other, my other Crescent kayaks with me. And the next day, it's still third day of a tournament, was able to just take a little 10-footer out up a creek and get 90 something inches and still cash a check in the NC, because at least I did have that sort of backup stuff there ready to roll. So it's never a bad idea to bring multiple kayaks to an event if you have multiple for all kinds of reasons, or extra batteries, extra motors, things like that. So
you can never get too prepared.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, I bring. It's funny because I bring nothing on the water. I'm known for being a simplistic angler. I prefer and want, and I scout, and I just try my hardest every tournament to find somewhere where I can use that little Crescent ultralight 10-footer, some little small out of the way place, and only carry 3 rods and like one little tackle box. I try my best. Everyone knows that about me, right? Because that's what I love. That's why I got into this, Jimmy, to do that, river bassin, dude, river bassin. However, I bring the entire kitchen sink. Anyone who stayed with me to Airbnb, I've just carried in loads and loads of Plano boxes, bins and bins. And they're like, this is insanity. How in the world do you need all this when all you do is use most of the time, 3 full rods, a little kayak and, bending branches paddle. And that's about it. And the reason is because I'll figure that out, in pre-fishing, what I'm going to need to narrow it down. And then it's all, of course, there. So you can never be too prepared. I do bring backup motors, batteries, everything. So I think we pretty much covered it. That's your tournament prep for the year, guys. And I know, some of you guys maybe are starting pretty soon. And but those who are not, you got plenty of time to do and take some of the tips that Jimmy and I have shared. And then if you're also taking a tip we shared and you're spacing your tournaments out, even if you've got one coming up in that 3-week window between your next one, plenty of time to get some of this stuff buttoned up, dialed in as you start your ascent on the national scene. Ascend.
Heck yeah.
To ascend, not ascent. Oh, whatever.
Ascend.
Ascend. Yeah, ascend.
Well, all right. Well, we appreciate you coming in, Drew. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Just to give everybody a little look, just a little bit above that, first time tournament angler to more of a seasoned angler that may be looking for a few tips on, taking the national trail or traveling angler, whatever it is to you, a little more seriously, or being a little more efficient, and seeing how somebody that's at the top of the game does it. Spreadsheets seem to be a common thing with a lot of folks. I need to work on my Excel apparently, because Drew's is all in the house and calculate stuff for him. I got to get to that point. I'm still, pad and piece of paper kind of guy. But yeah, great show, man. I was glad to have you back. Hopefully we'll get you back on co-hosting some more once the tournaments start rolling around, doing some tourney talk.
Yeah, man. We'll see how much I can pop on. This can be a crazy year, but I will be, starting back with the River Bassin podcast too with Ken Morris. So changing the name from Hooked on Wild Waters to River Bassin. We've talked about that on here. So getting that back up and going as well. And you guys will be excited to hear some new formats we're doing with that. I'm excited to hear about pretty soon, maybe even the time this is out and you're listening to this, there will be a fantasy kayak fishing show from Paddle and Fin. As Brian and Armando and the whole crew at Paddle and Fin, Susie, everybody is kind of taken what Ken and I developed and kind of passed it off to you guys, because I just haven't really had the time or the resources to really get it to the next level. And I think you guys can. And Brian has, I promise you, that's a good show. If you guys go and listen to that one, if it's up already live when you're listening to this, because it is going to be a good one. You're going to be excited what the folks at Paddle and Fin have done to the fantasy game this year to make it way more interesting and exciting and more engaging. So I'm excited.
I'll have to check it out too.
Yeah.
Well, all right, man.
All right.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been a great one. We will see you next week. We'll figure out a hot new topic for next week. See you. Peace.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.